On the telephone, we have the one and only Dr. Alison Cronin, and we're talking monkeys this morning on Ignition. A very good morning.
Good morning, Clive.
And, of course, monkeys. Hey, what a subject to talk about at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Yeah, well, that's sort of every day of the week for us, of course.
Of course. Now, just looking down my notes, of course, you have done so much in the monkey world as well. You actually have a place in Dorset, am I right?
Yeah, you've not been down to Monkey World in Dorset, Clive?
I haven't, no, not yet.
Shame on you. Yes, we're down in Dorset, and we assist governments around the globe, actually, to stop the smuggling of primates from the wild. So when international wildlife laws are enforced that protect endangered species, governments will get in touch with us and let us know that they've seized illegal wildlife. And basically we provide a home where those refugees can go to and live out a more natural life, which means that governments are able to enforce those laws that protect the primates. So that's how the park got started. It started in 1987. My husband founded the park. At that point in time, there were hundreds of chimpanzees being used on the costas in Spain along the beaches as beach photographers' props. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that before, but those chimpanzees had been actually stolen from the wild, so hunters would go out and shoot several individuals from the group and take them and eat them as bushmeat, but then any babies that were clinging to their mothers, if they weren't actually killed during the process, would be shoved into baskets and smuggled out of Africa as a byproduct of the Bushmeat Trade, and sold internationally on the black market to become beach photographers' props or illegal pets, that kind of thing. And, that was, more than 25 years ago that we started this now, and we continue to assist governments around the globe to try and stop the illegal trade. So, to date we've assisted 24 different governments because the international wildlife trade is a global problem.
Is smuggling a very big problem around the UK and around the world at the moment?
Yes, it is. Whether it's, orangutans being smuggled around the globe for the black market pet trade, or whether it's now there's a burgeoning trade in nocturnal, a very odd and strange nocturnal primate called a loris from Southeast Asia, where, people are buying these on the black market. These are highly protected endangered species, and yet I guess people think that it makes them more windswept and interesting if they own an exotic pet rather than a domesticated animal which has been bred for, thousands of years in order to be companion animals.
Now, I didn't know that you can actually buy monkeys across the counter at any pet store or exotic pet store. Now, can I just give you a quote that you said that most of the trade seems to be coming in the delisted species that are commonly purchased over the counter at a pet shop. Do you think there should be a law that says you cannot buy monkeys across the counter?
Well, yeah, I'd be very happy if the laws were to change in order to make it illegal to own a primate in Britain today, but I don't believe that that's ever going to happen. For years and years, as long as Monkey World has existed, there has been a legal trade in primates as pets in this country, and as you were saying earlier, there's many, many different species of primate that can be bought and sold over the counter of a pet shop in Britain today, just like you would a budgie or a goldfish. So that's without checking anybody's background, without making sure that they have the appropriate environment, circumstances, or even knowledge on how to care for this specialized in, wild animal. People are able to buy every single species of marmoset, every single species of tamarin, and every single species of squirrel monkey, and that totals more than 60 different species of small monkey that can be bought and sold without, like a goldfish in this country today. And in the last, 5 to 10 years, this legal trade in primates as pets in Britain has become a huge problem for us, actually. People know us for our international work, but actually this chronic problem that we're facing with the legal trade in primates as pets is just enormous. And in the last 5 years, I've brought in more than 50 monkeys from the British pet trade.
Do you think that the dealing in illegal pet trade monkeys, do you think it should be stamped out? Do you think there should be pressure on the government to try and get a bill passed through to actually get this stamped out? I mean, especially in the trade of, as we were talking about before, Alison, about bushmeat. I mean, it is illegal to bring bushmeat into the UK. Do you think the government are just turning a blind eye?
No, I don't. Not at all. And those are two quite very distinct, different sort of aspects of a trade in primates, really. The bushmeat trade is a trade in, as the name implies, meat of wild primates or other forest species that are smuggled into the country, and this poses all kinds of different health risks, as well as, of course, conservation risks to the wildlife that's being hunted, captured, and then smuggled into the country illegally. Of course, what we're dealing with is the trade in live primates, which is very different. And it's only the marmosets, the tamarins, and the squirrel monkeys that can be traded without any form of licensing in Britain today in a legal way. And all of those animals are mostly captive bred. It's very rare that we get a case that the primates, as part of the British pet trade, the legal British pet trade, are brought in from the wild. These marmosets and tamarins, if you do care for them correctly, do breed well. They generally give birth to twins, and if those twins are removed from the mother and father because they share duty of care, quite forward-thinking species, if those babies are removed and then for hand-rearing, the breeders and dealers that are perpetuating this trade at the moment tell people that, you can buy this tiny, tiny infant monkey, and they just are a tiny ball of fluff at that point in time. And they need to be with their parents for up to a year. They're pulled away, forcibly orphaned, and that's how the trade begins. And then those animals will go on to breed again. So it's the breeders and dealers who do know how to keep them and who do know that it's the wrong thing to do to these animals that are making a ton of money, generally speaking, off of well-meaning individuals of the British public who unknowingly purchase a small monkey because they've been told by the breeders and dealers that they make lovely pets, which they don't, that they can live on their own inside of a bird cage in your sitting room, and that they can eat table scraps. And, it's just tragic, and it just fills my heart full of sorrow because we're picking up so many from the pet trade that are suffering physically and mentally. And when I say that, I mean, people say, oh, well, it's monkey world. Of course they'd say that. But I'm getting in animals that are profoundly crippled because they haven't been fed correctly and have been kept in a bird cage with no access to natural sunlight, and they develop really, really bad rickets, which is, of course, an old disease, which people can get and has come up in the news recently because people do such a good job at looking after their children by putting sunscreen on them, or children sit inside and don't get outside and get as much sunlight anymore. And there have been cases of rickets popping up in human children in the British population as well. So this is totally avoidable. These animals pair bond for life. They need to live with others of their own kind. As wild animals, they need access to an outdoor enclosure. And nutritionally, they have a very specialized diet that requires vitamin supplements to keep their bones strong. And none of these things, generally speaking, are happening across the board from people who are buying these small monkeys over the Internet, over social media sites, or over the counter from pet shops, from breeders and dealers who are taking... I mean, one of the young marmosets that I rescued recently was sold for £1,700. Oh. that was quite extreme. Usually they go for about 1,200 pounds, but even still, it's a lot of money that, like I said, well-meaning but ignorant people are investing in what they think is going to be a wonderful family pet, and it just turns into a nightmare for them because they do care about the animal, and it starts suffering physically and mentally, and then that's when Monkey World gets the call.
Do you think it's the ignorance of people, the fact that they say, oh yes, we'll buy you a nice little cuddly monkey for Christmas, and then they can't look after it? Then your place must get really busy after Christmas with people bringing you monkeys that they just can't really look after properly.
It's not just Christmas, Clive. This is a year-round issue.
Right.
We're getting primates brought into us, or we're getting calls to come collect them every month. There's a couple every month, and like I said, in the last 5 years, I've brought in more than 50. In those same 5 years, I've built a complex that would home 20 or more monkeys, depending upon how well we rehabilitate them and what kind of groups we get them into, with outside enclosures. And that first complex to take 20 or more, I filled in about 6 weeks.
Wow. And
then we created a waiting list for the whole of 2014 while we built yet another complex for victims of the British pet trade, again, similar size, to rehome 20 to 30 more monkeys from the British pet trade. And I got on my waiting list, and indeed I filled that building in 5 weeks. So we're back to the point now, unless it's a tiny infant marmoset that I get a call about, that we can try and get one of our pairs to adopt, then we're going to start back onto our waiting list again. But, we can't continue at Monkey World to just keep building new buildings for all of these victims of the British pet trade. And it is tragic. We have been in discussions with the government. They did have a select committee review for EFRA, the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Department, on the keeping of primates as pets. That was 2 years ago now, I guess, or maybe just a year and a half ago. They had various experts and specialists in to talk about the trade. I was one of those people. And I guess whereas I would accept a complete ban on the trade because really, so many animals are suffering, at the same time, what I'm trying to be more practical and level-headed and not asking for a ban on the trade because, quite frankly, who am I to say who gets to keep a monkey in this country? These smaller primates, it is possible to keep them correctly. What Monkey World's calling for are effectively laws or guidance to local authorities to ensure that if a primate is being kept in private hands, that it's kept properly. That's all I'm looking for because, quite frankly, it's not that I don't care, but I don't care where the animal's living. I care how it's living.
Yeah.
And if a person has too much money and time on their hands to be able to spend on these animals in their care and they can do it properly, then who am I to say that they shouldn't be able to do that? Monkey World's not the only place or zoos or wildlife parks that are open to the public. There are a lot of, Britain's good mainstream zoos and wildlife parks. A lot of them actually started out as private animal collections. Chester Zoo, for example, who has a very good record in caring for its animals and a good standard of welfare. So many of these places did start out as private animal collections. So it's not that there necessarily needs to be an outright ban, but certainly those animals that are kept in Britain today should be guaranteed a right and proper standard of care, and that's what Monkey World's all about.
So if a person wants to come to you for information and advice, if they're going to look after a monkey properly, like the enclosure, the diet, then they can come to you firsthand?
Nope, we won't offer advice or suggestions on how to do it. We're not a DIY shop. And furthermore, if you don't know how to care for primates and haven't done your research and already gained experience yourself, me telling you just basic numbers and principles on what you should do isn't going to cut it.
Right.
Because it'd be like me saying, okay, so you're going to have a child, you'll need a crib and a bottle and a sterilizer, and, really you can just crack on. It's not appropriate.
Yeah.
So, no, we don't offer advice or how-to guidelines, but if, what we say to people who call us up who are concerned either about theirs or about a monkey that they've seen that's in need, we'll offer to rehome if we indeed don't have a waiting list already going. So we do as much as we can, but we're not ever going to be assisting with the trade.
Right. Now, you must be busy year on year protecting and rescuing monkeys. Now, the thing is, how do you get funded? Because do you do events? Are you funded by the government? Or is it solely yourself that has to do the funding?
Yeah, we receive absolutely no support from any government agencies or bodies, although I must say with all of the animals we're getting in from the legal British pet trade, I am thinking about whether I need to top up a bill for everything that we've invested in the British pet trade and take it to my MP or to the government as expenses. But no, Monkey World's entirely self-funded. We are open to the public so that people can come and learn about our rescued monkeys and apes and learn about the plight that primates face around the globe, whether it's being smuggled or used in laboratories, circuses, the entertainment industry, or those individuals that are victims of the British pet trade. You can see the rescued animals here at the park, and that's how we pay for our rescue work. But we also run an adoption scheme for our individual monkeys and apes, which, you were asking about the holiday season. That has been actually going really well because so many people are aware of our work through the television series Monkey Life that they get in touch and want to assist our work and give a more meaningful Christmas gift that continues on throughout the year. So, yes, you can adopt one of our rescued monkeys and apes and know that you're helping support their care, but also that those funds go towards rescuing others like them. And that seems to be a very popular Christmas gift with a bit of heart.
So what's the biggest monkey stroke ape that you've ever rescued and taken to Monkey World?
Well, we have monkeys and apes here at the park, and so the two species of great ape that we have are chimpanzees and orangutans. I guess actually we have three because we have two different species of orangutan. Orangutans come in two different flavors, Bornean and Sumatran. And as the name implies, they come from the two islands of Borneo and Sumatra. And, the orangutans in the wild are now on the brink of extinction. The numbers are so small, their habitats being cut down so quickly for the development of palm oil plantations, and there's still a black market trade in the infants. So orangutans are really in a perilous position right now, and we have at the park now 17 here at the park that we are working on techniques on how to care for them. We look after them here, and again, so many of them have come from the black market trade when we assist governments around the globe to stop the smuggling. So many of our orangutans have come from the black market trade, having been smuggled out of Borneo into Taiwan for either amusement parks or private pet trade. I've got an individual female here from South Africa who had been taken from Indonesia with paperwork, albeit, I believe, illegal paperwork, into South Africa as an infant and was raised as part of a family in South Africa for 13 years before she became wholly unmanageable and unruly. And sadly for this orangutan, Oshin, the way her owner tried to have a relationship with her and basically control her was with food. And when we went to rescue Oshin, she rocked the scales at 100 kilos.
Wow.
Which is more than 3 times her natural body weight. So she was morbidly obese.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're cutting it down to, pounds and ounces, Oisin was the biggest primate that we've ever brought back to the park. But that was 3-4 years ago now, and just on a natural, normal orangutan diet that we feed our guys here at the park, and with exercise and companionship of her own kind so that she's moving around and keeping busy. Oisin has gone from 100 kilos, now she's 68.5 kilos, I think, her last weigh. Sorry, I take that back. She was 65 kilos, so she's lost almost half of her body weight.
Now, the thing is, they say that the world is one truly global village, and the fact is that it is a problem if, like, they're cutting down the forest around halfway around the world, and of course it's the monkey's habitat. It affects us all, doesn't it?
Well, that's a very big subject of discussion, debate right now, whether in France, with all of the global leaders trying to come to agreements on how to cut greenhouse gases, and the number one sort of purifier on this planet is the world's forests. So yes, by cutting them down, greenhouse gases are not processed as quickly or as well through the atmosphere, and it's a problem. Habitat destruction affects, yes, the world, and of course all of the animals that live in those forests. So on the islands of Borneo and Sumatra, which are just being decimated, obviously we're concerned about the primates and the orangutans, but the orangutans are representative of every animal that lives in that ecosystem, and it is just a disaster that these forests are being devastated. And it is, as you suggest, Clive, a global problem, because the people of Borneo and Sumatra have to make a living. And what always strikes me when traveling the globe, assisting different governments with different primate issues, animal welfare and conservation is a luxury item. And you don't care about the conservation of orangutans, the welfare of a chimpanzee, unless you and your family are living in a certain level where you have education, health care, food on the table every night. And so really, it is a global issue and problem, because the rest of the world cannot demand, the people of Britain cannot demand that the Indonesian government protect every bit of their forests, when, of course, Britain itself has changed radically over, thousands of years, and the wildlife that used to roam free on the island of Britain no longer exists anymore, although there are some people talking about trying to readdress that issue.
Yeah. Do you think that in the times of social media, do you think social media plays a big part in your campaign?
Well, for us, we use, yes, social media. Of course, we have a Facebook site and a Twitter account for the park, and we receive information from people around the globe when they're on their travels. If they see a monkey or an ape being used or abused in a certain way, they're encouraged to get in touch and let us know. We do a lot of our own investigative work and follow up on people's reports. So that's a positive note. But to be honest, most of the social media I view is really only a detriment to the conservation and welfare of so many of these animals, because a lot of the black market trade, or as we were discussing before, the legal trade in primates as pets, is encouraged and promoted over social media. And that unique nocturnal primate I was talking about at the beginning of our chat, the loris from Southeast Asia, it was just a few years ago that there was a video clip, I believe on YouTube, that went viral of a person tickling a loris. It was actually a loris that had been stolen from the wild, so taken from the forests of Southeast Asia and smuggled into the Russian Federation, where this video clip was made of a loris being, quote-unquote, tickled by its now owner. And, they're such beautiful and endearing primates, but you have to remember those big, round, glossy eyes are that way because they're nocturnal, so that animal shouldn't be awake with bright lights in its face during the daytime. And loris also are the only primates that have a semi-toxic bite. They have glands on their elbows that they can lick in order to make their saliva toxic, which is how they defend themselves from predators, from monitor lizards and snakes in the forests of Southeast Asia. So, keeping a loris as a pet, really, it's not a great pet. They smell quite a lot. They've got a semi-toxic bite, and they're nocturnal. And yet the social media sites took this video clip viral, and now there is a burgeoning black market trade in loris as pets, and it's in Britain. I've assisted UK police to do raids on houses where lorises have been. I'm working on a case right now of a loris that's been smuggled into Europe that I have a government asking if it can be sorted out and rehomed.
Do you think that with the demise of certain monkeys around the world, do you think the human species will ever learn?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, it comes down to, as I said before, in my opinion, that we're quite a greedy, selfish species. And the fact is that everybody wants to do better for themselves and for their families, and that's an understandable goal and pursuit. You want the best for your own. And whether that means that it's local hunters and farmers, in situ countries, in countries where primates come from, going out and hunting them or destroying the habitat to create farmland, it's understandable if they're trying to care for and look after their families. And around the globe, if there are wealthy people that think that they feel more important and that they're more windswept and interesting because they own a black market illegal chimpanzee, then it's going to happen if they've got that much money. So, I mean, I guess I'm fairly pragmatic and pessimistic about the future of non-human primates on humans sharing the planet with other wildlife. I'm not sure that there is much future and hope unless something radically changes.
But the great thing, Alison, is it's the fact that if it's not for your work that you do and other people around the world, then this plight of the monkey wouldn't be brought to the fore.
Well, it does. It makes everybody smile and laugh when I say everybody loves a monkey. Everybody loves primates. It's true. To that effect, the work that we do here at the park is often very difficult, and it does involve law enforcement and confronting people or smugglers often. But, I try and always keep a level head and understand why people are doing the things that they are. I mean, some people are just cruel, nasty, and barbaric, and that's a fact. There's a certain percentage of people out there in the world. But more times than not, people are either just trying to make a living or are misguided or don't understand what it is that they're doing. And what I always try and have understanding of the different circumstances in which we're working, because there's no point in just being outraged and confronting everybody at all times. Otherwise, the animals never win. Monkey World, for example, rehomes a lot of primates from biomedical laboratories. And I don't agree with the circumstances in which these biomedical labs are often using these primates. But we don't campaign against on the moral platform of whether or not these experiments should even be taking place. What we campaign is to get as many of the primates out of the labs as possible with demanding a guarantee that they will not be replaced, and to sort of make sure that the environments in which they're being kept are being highlighted, because once again, it's sort of like the pet trade. I don't even need to begin discussing the moral aspects of the laboratories when the circumstances in the environments that they keep the primates in are so poor. So number one, animals primates need to be kept in companionship of their own kind, whether it be in laboratories or in the pet trade or anywhere else. And, that's what we try and do here at Monkey World, is give them back their lives again and rehabilitate them into normal living family groups. But it's understandable and perhaps ironic why everybody loves these animals so much and therefore uses and abuses them, is they're so much like ourselves.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think people, they have this image of a cute monkey. I remember as a child, the Chimps Tea Party. Mm-hmm. This is a sort of image that people have of monkeys, which I think is a bit of a sort of distraught image to actually have, do you think?
Well, yes, it's completely unnatural. I mean, it's what I always say to people. If you see a chimpanzee dressed up, sat down, even if it's not dressed up, but sat down behaving calmly as if it were having either a tea party or just hanging out. If there is a chimp in a television program that's just sitting there looking calm, cool, and collected, know that there's something wrong. These are extremely volatile and aggressive animals that are not calm and relaxed. They live in large, extended families and are quite loud, aggressive, boisterous, and tearing the house down if they're behaving naturally. And this is part of the tragedy of the entertainment industry, is that chimpanzees are, the way a chimp tea party begins is by making an orphan. Yeah. And, any trade or industry that starts off with making an orphan, you got to know that it's wrong, and that's indeed what happens in the entertainment industry, is that a chimpanzee in captivity most usually will give birth, and the infant is forcibly removed from that mother. Now you've got a baby that is dependent upon you, because like human beings, chimpanzees, all of the great apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, or pygmy chimps, all have a long maternal dependency. We, too, are great apes and share so much in our upbringing, intelligence, emotions are all the same. So those orphan chimpanzees are desperate for somebody's care and attention. In fact, they have to have it, and in the absence of their mother, they will cling on to people, and that's when the training process begins. So these chimps that are sat around a table drinking tea or performing in television programs are orphans. Yeah. And they've been pulled away from their mothers. Often they have their teeth knocked out, because even as orphans, as they grow up, they are volatile and strong and potentially aggressive. So a lot of the time, most of the time as they get older, their teeth will be knocked out or removed so that they can't bite and hurt people. They're often doped up on drugs to calm them down. And nonetheless, still, when they reach about 6, 7, if you're lucky, 8 years old, they start reaching maturity, they will rebel, and they become too big, too massive, and too out of control to handle. And at that point, they get, quote-unquote, retired from the entertainment industry. But what you've ended up creating is a totally, schizo, crazy animal that doesn't know how to relate to others of its own kind, and therefore, trying to rehabilitate these chimpanzees who have been orphaned and grown up in bizarre circumstances is extremely difficult. And Monkey World's, one of very few sanctuaries on the planet that actually takes this task on. Most zoos and wildlife parks think we're crazy because, the zoos tend to have one group of chimpanzees that, numbers 6 individuals, and it's quite a stable, somewhat boring lifestyle, but, that chimp group lives together. Here at the park, because we're assisting so many different governments around the world and taking chimpanzees from the black market and whatever circumstances of abuse or cruelty, all of our guys are, mostly speaking, unrelated, and we rehabilitate them into groups again. And that's no easy task because they grow into 60-kilo monsters that can rip each other's arms off. But, here at the park now we've got 58 chimpanzees, which is quite crazy and unheard of. We've managed to rehabilitate them into 4 social groups. So, we're doing pretty well, but then we provide sort of bigger, specially designed environments to encourage them to all get on together. So we have a huge extended family here. Like I said, we've been sort of filming our rescue and rehabilitation work now for 18 years, and people are still just fascinated by the programs and watching our guys get their lives back again, and it's really quite nice to see.
Yeah, because it's quite upsetting and I think quite degrading for a monkey when they go through all these events like, let's say, the Chimps Tea Party, or if they're dressed up, or if they're in their unnatural environments. They're intelligent creatures, and they should be treated with respect.
Yeah, it's interesting because there has been a group of people who started a campaign to give apes rights as non-human beings. So it's called the Great Ape Project, and they're looking in law to give great apes non-human rights. And, whereas I understand their interest in trying to acknowledge the intelligence and the culture and the emotions of the great apes, once again, I find it a bit demeaning and a bit offensive, really, because indeed that's what all of our guys have suffered from, being treated as unofficial human beings, whether it's being taken and dressed up in, clothing to sit down and perform a tea party, or whether it's being used in a biomedical laboratory or taken into people's homes because they look like, cute, hairy babies. They're all being treated as unofficial human beings, and to me, what's important is to acknowledge the apes, the chimpanzees, the orangutans, the gorillas, as important in their own right.
Absolutely.
So, I'd like people to feel that they're significant and important and not enough to deserve rights as a chimpanzee or as a gorilla, not as an unofficial human being.
Right. Now, let's talk about Monkey World very, very quickly. Monkey World, now, where are you based?
We're based in Dorset, near Bournemouth or Poole, on the south coast.
And, of course, do you have a website?
Yes, our website address is www.monkeyworld.org. And on the site you can see all of our different groups of primates here at the park. We've got 20 different species of primate, sort of numbering more than 260 individuals on site today that have come from, like I said, around the globe, but also then from a very legal and thriving trade in primates as pets in this country today. So here at the park you can see our rescued guys living more natural lives with others of their own kind.
Well, Dr. Alison Cronin, I could talk longer about this subject. It's been absolutely fascinating. One final question. Your Monkey World, is there a point where there is a saturation point where you can't take any more monkeys?
Well, we've always sort of grown organically over the years. We've been going since 1987, and once again, different than most zoos or wildlife parks, we're not here to exhibit our animals for public display or, purposefully for education. However, we do have to pay for ourselves, so when visitors come to the park, that's how we pay for the work that we do. We'll continue on here assisting as many governments around the globe as we can, and we've always just grown organically and therefore always found a way and a means to continue on. So at the moment, I don't foresee us having a problem continuing to take on individuals other than, like I said, when there seems to be a glut or a really bad chronic problem like we're facing right now with the British pet trade. At the moment on site today, I've got more than 30 marmosets from the British pet trade. All in, I've got more than 35 marmosets from the British pet trade. and we're being buried under the problem. So, yeah, we're onto a waiting list. But overall, if there's primates in need and we can be of assistance, we'll carry on doing just that.
Well, Dr. Alison Cronin, thank you ever so much for coming on to Ignition Radio this morning and talking about the plight of monkeys. As I say, it is a truly global problem and it needs to be tackled. And if it wasn't for your work, then, well, I think this world would be in a more sorrow state.
That's very kind of you to say, Clive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as I say, if you want to go down, then Monkey World is down in Dorset, between Bournemouth and Poole. And, of course, why not join in with their website as well? As I said, Alison, all the information that we've been talking about this morning on Ignition Radio will be on our website, which is www.ignitionradio.co.uk. Alison, thank you once again for taking time out to be with us this morning.
All right, Clive. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
And a Merry Christmas to you. Thank you, Alison.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.